Okay, so in this video, what I'm not going to be doing is going over the actual cut list itself. What I just want to do is show you how I designed the cut list. And basically, here's how it works. This is looking straight down on the two stair treads. So I've got one stair tread down here. When you buy them, they're 11.5 inches with the nosing. Now keep in mind that there's a nosing on there, and then they're exactly 48 inches wide. So like some of the things to consider in that design were, how do you get two 24-inch boards out of a 48-inch board? And you really can't when you consider the saw kerf on a typical chop saw. So, but I took that into consideration, and everything is going to work out just fine. The other part of this is we've got an 11.5-inch starter board, the tread itself, but we're going to lose this red area, which is a 1/2 inch nosing. And I don't know if I show that as a nosing here. I don't show it as an actual nosing. I show it as a square. I didn't bother putting the arc on it, but I did need to and wanted to take that into consideration when I drew the cut list. So the way I did the cut list was I took the boards themselves that are eventually going to come out of that. So right here I have tray 1, and so I laid that tray into position, right? And I tucked it way to the left, the front left corner, and that tray is 11-inch. That tray number 1 is 11 inches deep, so therefore we're taking into consideration that 1/2 inch loss of the nosing, right? And then that tray is 24 inches wide. So that covers tray 1, and then I made a note down here. This is part of the sequence, which is step number 1: cross cut at 24 inches, straddle the mark so that each board shares the loss of the kerf. And so right here we're going to share the loss of that kerf. So each board is going to be like 23 and I don't know 15/16 or something like that, right? Okay. And then the next step, there's the step number 1, right? Okay. Then it goes up to step number 2. And so, I'm sorry, it goes over here. I was going up onto the second tread. This is the tread number 2, by the way. So again, tread number 1, we're still on that. Then I said, all right, we're going to be able to get those two, the front and the back, out of there. So I've got a 5.5-inch board, a 5.5-inch board, but they're going to be coming out of this piece that we already cut out of there. So now what I've got, and again, you're only seeing the surface laid over the top of the actual stair tread itself. Again, that was my way of maintaining my sanity on this. And they're both, again, tucked to the left. We're going to lose saw kerf on that, but keeping in mind that this front and this back are actually going to be mounted directly under the tray 1. So if there's discrepancy, if one of them is 23 and 17 or 15/16 and the one below it is 23 and 15/16, not an issue, because then the ends are going to butt nice and neat. So basically on that board, those are the 3 or 4 cuts, and then what's going to happen is there's going to be this loss of that that strip in the back, that 1/2 inch. So then when we got to tray 2, it got a little more complicated, to say the least, right? But this is basically the way I did it. And for those of you that are into SketchUp, I'll just cover that in a second here. So basically, if I go to my entire model and I zoom way out, you're not seeing anything out here. There is stuff out there. In fact, if I go to view and I say view hidden objects, okay, you can see that there's a lot going on out on this model out here, and these are all different what do you call it, different groups that are out there. For some reason it's not moving on me right now, so I'm not going to worry about it. But if I go to cut list, I think it's freezing up on me. How about that? There it goes. Okay, so it froze up on me because there was actually probably so much content out of there, and even though this is a pretty powerful computer, it froze up on me for a second. But there is nothing there, and that's because this, if I just click anywhere, you can see this is a group, and that way I can hide it when I go to do other things like tray 3. That automatically hides that other one, and then this becomes a group, etc., etc. So there's how that's how I kind of did those for those of you that are interested in that kind of stuff. And then let me go back up to the cut list up here. Okay, so I'm going up to a tab up here for cut list. And again, that always takes me back to this particular view of the scene. So on this board number 2, or on stair tread number 2, again, I'm in the group, but I started by taking tray number 2, which is the largest of them, and this is just a 2-dimensional version of it. So if I drag that off of there, you can see how that fit in there, and then that fit there. That told me then, that gave me what I needed to know to do, like number 1, starting with a full 49-inch stair, or should say 48-inch stair tread. That's a mistake, I can fix that. But start here and make a cross cut, and then number 2, using that board, you start doing this, and then you can start to see that I then took up here those risers. So there's those 2 risers are right there, but I've made sure that those fit in there, and did some vertical stuff, so I have vertical cuts. And again, I'm keeping in mind that the nosing is up here. Then I was able to take tray number before doing that, these are the 2 vices. So there's a vise here. All right, that's a vise. I slid that in there. The only way I could get those out of there was by doing them vertically, which sometimes you don't do with wood grain. You know, there's certain ways you want to handle wood grain, but because these are glue ups anyhow, the stair treads, it's really not that critical. So I was able to get those in there, squeeze those. Then tray number 2, and that tucked right in there. So I got that. And that's 13 inches wide, and then I wrote up the instructions for that, constantly working my way, trying to get as much as I could around either clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on which worked out the best. And then up here you can see I've got the 2 spreaders. They're both in here. And then there's just a little bit of leftover. Well, the nice thing about that leftover is that then was what I was referring to here. That's why I tucked everything to the left. I didn't try to put an 1/8 inch saw curve in on these. Instead, I just tucked them to the left, tucked them to the left, tucked them to the left, knowing that when I got out to the end, I was still going to have about 1.5 inches or 1 inch or so of material. Then I ended up with this one board up here that was basically going to be scrap. And what I decided to do with that, as you will see, is because it's 1 inch thick, I was able to take that, run it on the bandsaw, and then rip it or resaw it into 2 boards that were just slightly over 3/8 of an inch thick, and then that allowed me to do a glue up on those to make the floor. So I had just enough. Again, so this is how I drew the cut list, and everything is all on one sheet. I even brought the floor in here, and I didn't dimension the floor. I noticed that earlier. And so really what I'm going to do is just do the automatic dimension on that. SketchUp of course does that for you. That's why I put in, and these corners are going to be mitered, but you're going to see that when we get into shaping the materials. And the reason for that is that the dados are not going to run all the way to the end. On the back and the front, we'll cover that. But for dimensioning, it's nice to have the automatic dimensioning. It's nice to actually make the board, and then with the full length, and then it's a lot easier to dimension. So that's how I did the cut list for the project. And the next we'll get into some dados and things like that. So there you go.